Hello, and welcome to our first lesson using our hands-on equations lessons. So today we're going to talk about algebraic equations and the very first moves in one-step equations. So first of all, to start off, an algebraic equation is a mathematical statement in which two expressions are set equal to each other. For us, for our purposes, ours are going to have variables, coefficients, constants, and equal signs somewhere in there. Our key concept is that for all algebraic equations, the value of the left side of the equal sign must be equal to the value of the right side of the equal sign. So our key concept there is that equations must be balanced, and we're going to see how to do that using manipulatives in a second. So for us, what we are going to be using today are blue pawns that look like this. Ooh. We're going to be using green cubes that look like this, and they have numbers on them, and red cubes that also have numbers on them. Okay, so for our purposes, our blue pawns here are going to represent our variables. Our green cubes, oh, I should have maybe done that in blue, sorry. I will do this here. Our blue pawns are going to be our variable. Our green cubes are going to represent our positive numbers. And today we won't get to the negatives yet, but eventually our red cubes are going to represent negative or minus, okay? So negative numbers for red cubes. So we'll write it in today though and revisit. Okay, so that's kind of setting the stage for what we're going to do. We are going to, if you're sitting in the class right now, you will have a balance scale looking like this, and it's on a paper. And let me zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole thing. And you will be given a set of blue pawns looking like this. You should have more than one. And you'll have red cubes for negatives and green cubes for positives. But we are only going to need the green cubes and the blue pawns today. So let's get those out. So every kit should have those in them. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this to represent the first equation I have written on here, which says, and I'll do it bigger, it says x plus 3 has to equal 9. So the reasoning for this, I know some of you can look at this and you can say, I know what x equals. But what you don't realize is what you're actually doing in your mind and in the mathematics, okay? And so we're going to represent this using our balance. So we're going to do an x, which is a blue pawn on the left. We're going to do a positive 3, which would be our green 3 cube. And that's got to equal 9. So we're going to put our 9 cube on the other side. Now, what we're doing here in mathematics is we're actually going to balance this scale. The only way you can balance the scale by the end, what our goal is to get our pawn all by itself on one side and then have a number on the other side so we know what it equals. The rules of the game are you can only take the same thing off or on each side of the scale at the same time. So, for example, the first thing we look at is there's not a blue pawn on this side, so I can't take off a blue pawn. And there's a 3 here and a 9 here. Well, in order to take that 3 off, I would need a 3 over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to break that 9 into a set that has a 3 in it. So I'm going to take this. I know that I could break this 9 into a 3 and a 6. And it still is equivalent to 9. So now if you look at the balance, you have a match of a 3 here on the left side and a 3 on the right side. So without tipping anything, you can take these off. Now, once you take it off, you find out that the pawn's weight is equal to 6. And that's actually how we solve that equation right there. That's the answer to the first one. Now, how do we draw this out on paper if we're at home? So I will show you on here. And again, I'll zoom it in. So to draw a picture of this, it's pretty easy. What you want to do is you would draw a representation of your scale for step 1. So here's my balance scale, and I'm just going to draw a little triangle there like it's balancing. And on the left side, I'm going to draw a colored in pawn for my blue pawn, even if you don't have a blue marker. And I'm going to draw a 3 cube. And then I'm going to draw a 9 cube on the other side. And I probably should have drawn that a little bit bigger. Sorry about that, but that is a 3 inside of there. Okay, now that's what the equation says. And so what did we do here? On our next step, we took our balance, right? And we had our blue pawn still and our 3 on this side. And then we took that 9 cube and we replaced it with a 6 and a 3 cube. And then we said to ourselves, okay, without tipping the scale, what could I take off of both sides? And we took off a 3. So I'm going to represent that by canceling them. And then what am I left with? Here's my balance. Okay, I was left with a blue pawn on the left side and a 6 cube on the right side. And so we know that our X, or our blue pawn, equals 6, or X equals 6. And that is what we want to represent here, okay? We know that, and you can check that by putting 6 into your X equation, and you can say, okay, does 6 plus 3 equal 9? And 6 plus 3, yep, 9 equals 9. That is our check. All right, and this is our answer. Let's try another one because this takes some getting used to. All right, the next one on here says 14 equals h plus 6. Now, does the variable matter what letter it is? And the answer is no, it doesn't. So we are going to still use our blue pawns to represent that variable h. Okay, so here's our scale again. Oops, going the other way. Sorry about that. All right, here's our scale. This time we're going to use the equation 14 equals h plus 6. And so here's our scale. And we're going to start with 14. So I have to get my pawns out where I have a 10 and a 4 because I don't have a 14 block. And then h plus 6. So h, remember, is our blue pawn. And then here's my 6. Okay, so again, I want to be able to take the same amount off of both sides. And I want to keep the pawn so that there's a pawn on one side and a block on the other. Okay, so 6, there's not a 6 over here, but could I break this 14 so that this is a 6? There is a 6 on there. How can I make 14 into a 6 and something else? Well, let's think about it. So this is 14. If I change this into a 6, then the other one would have to be an 8. And I'm sorry, I have to grab another block really quick from my box. So I can change 14 into being a 6 and an 8 instead. All I did was change the number. 8 plus 6 is still 14. And now I have a match of a 6 on both sides, and I can remove them, leaving me with just the pawn on one side and just one number on the other, giving me the final solution that the pawn is equal to 8. Okay, let's represent this on paper. So on paper now, zoom back in, what does this look like? So we draw our scale. I'm going to use a different color this time. So drawing your scale, here it is. We're going to say, okay, now I had a 10 and a 4 there, but I could, if I had bigger blocks, leave it a 14 as one block. And I'm going to do that here. But I'm going to represent my pawn over here for an H, and then my 6 block right here. Okay, now again, we had to take a 6 off of both sides. Well, we need to break the 14 up. So if I know I need a 6 in my next move, I'm going to put a 6 block in. And then what other block would I need to make 14? Well, 6, you can even count on your fingers. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I would need an 8 block, which we saw. And then I still have the pawn and the 6 block on the other side. All right, now do I have a move where I can take a block off of both sides? Yes, I have a match of a 6 and a 6, which I could remove. And to represent that on paper, we just cancel those out, leaving us with our final scale being an 8 block on our left side and just a blue pawn on the right. And so we figure out that our pawn is equal to 8, which in our equation means our H letter is equal to 8. That's our variable. And this is the answer we wanted. Now we check it by putting it back in. So this side 14 equals H would be 8 plus 6. And does that work is the question. So 8 plus 6 is that 14. If you count 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yep. So 14 does in fact equal 14. And that's our check. And we know we've done it correctly. Okay, hopefully that gets you a start on how to do this with our blocks and our pawns and a picture if you need to. The assignment that goes along with this first lesson that we're giving is looking like this. It says solving one-step equations at the top, and you've got some practice on here, okay? And so the idea will walk you through one or two of them and how to write them, how to use them. So you can use your blocks if you've got them to help you solve them. So let's do this. Oh, I'm sorry. We haven't done the subtraction yet. I'm sorry. We are not ready for that. So our next part is how to do the subtraction. My mistake. I didn't realize we had to go all the way through that. Okay, so subtraction's a little bit more challenging. So our subtraction, and I had said at the beginning, we're not using our negative numbers, but we actually are today because we're still on day 1. So subtraction, we have C minus 9 equals 14 for our first subtraction. Okay, so minus, we're going to use those red cubes. Let me show you how we're going to set this one up. Okay, so let's do our next one. C minus 9 equals 14. Okay, so we're going to use our blue pawn to represent our C. And then minus 9, we're going to use a red cube for that. Equal 14. So I have to, again, I don't have cubes that go up past 10. So I have to put together a 10 and a 4 to give me 14. Or some combination that'll give me 14. Okay, so this is now different. even if I were to break this up to make a 9, these are positive and this is negative. So you cannot take a red cube off without having another red cube over here. So this is where we need to use something called zero pairs, okay? And so remember, we're trying to get this 9 off of there because that is where our pawn is. So what we can do is we can take a zero pair. A zero pair is a positive and negative of the same amount. So for example, I can add a positive 9 and a negative 9 to any side that I want to, as long as I add them together. Oh, that's a 6. Okay, so this is a zero pair. Positive 9 and negative 9 together make 0. So you can add this to the left side, to the right side, any side you want, because it really equals 0. So I'm going to add it to my right side. Here's why. Because now I can take that negative 9 off of both sides. And now my blue pawn is alone on the left side, and all I have left is numbers. Now, if I add that up, 10 plus 4 plus 9 more, what do I get? Well, 10 plus 4 is 14, plus 9 more is going to give me 23. So that is the value of C in this equation. Okay, let me show you on paper because this part is a little challenging. Okay, on paper, what does this look like on paper? And again, it looks a little different on paper than it does on your balance because our balance and our kits only go up to 10. All right, let's draw the picture now. So C minus 9 equals 14. All right, we'll start with our balance. Boop. And we're going to fill in. Okay, we've got a pawn. We have a minus 9. So what we're going to do is we're going to represent that with a negative number there. And then we're going to put a 14 block over here. Like this. Now, I know I used a 10 and a 4 because I had a 10 and a 4, but on our paper, we can use a regular 14 block. Now, what did we do next? There's no negative numbers over here. So what I do is I added a 0 pair to give me a negative number. This side stayed the same. And then I had my 14 on there. And then what I did was I added a negative 9 block over here. But in order to add that, I needed the positive 9 block so that it was a 0 pair added, so that it could balance it out. Then that gave me the opportunity to take off the negative 9s. I took those off. So remember, we represent that by canceling those out, leaving us now really all we had left on the left side is our pawn, right? And if we add these up, and we had to add 3 blocks before, but when we just do it ourselves without those blocks, we can do 14 plus 9. We can put those together and know that this would be a block value of 23. Okay, and so what do we have? We have our pawn equals 23, which in this case means C equals 23. And we check that by going, okay, does 23 minus 9 equal 14? And so if you count backwards, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, yes, it does. So we find out that 14 on the left does in fact equal 14 on the right. That's our check. So this is our correct answer. Okay, one more because this is such a challenge, okay? The last one we have on here for practice today is 4 equals J minus 7. So I'm going to start by using our blocks to show it, and then we'll do it on paper, okay? So here we're going back to our scale. Let's zoom out so you can see. All right, so 4 equals j minus 7. All right, let's start with our positive 4 block over here. And then we have our pawn to represent our j. And minus 7, we have to use the red block. That's our negative block. So our red block over here. Okay, again, remember, we're trying to get the pawn by itself on whatever side it's on. So we really want to take that 7 off. In order to take the red 7 off, I need a red 7 over here. But I only have greens. So if I only have greens and I need reds, the only way to get that off of there is to add a 0 pair over here. So we're going to find a red 7, but we also need a green 7 so that it's a 0 pair. So I'm going to add that over here. And then what I'm going to do is look and say, okay, now I have a red 7 on both sides that I can take off. I can remove. And I've reached my goal already of that blue pawn being by itself. And then if I add this up, 7 plus 4 is 11. So I know my blue pawn is equal to 11. Okay, let's show it on paper one last time. So on paper, here's what we have. Ooh, went on a little too far. Okay, so on paper, if I draw this out, here's my scale. Okay, so I have a 4 block on the left side. I had a pawn for my J, and then I used a red block. So I'm going to put a negative or a minus 7 there. Okay, and then I looked at it. I said, okay, I don't know. I don't have any negative or minus blocks over here, and they were red, but I need to get this off of there. So what we did is we kept our 4 block on there, kept our pawn on there, and our negative 7, but we added a 0 pair over here. We can add that negative 7, but we also needed a positive block of 7. My apologies for the school bell in the video. But we shouldn't hear that again. Okay, so now we have a negative 7 on both sides, which we removed those. So if I cancel and I cancel, I'm now left with a 7 and a 4 block over here on the left side, and just your blue pawn, it was blue, on the right side. And voila, I figured out that the blue pawn was equal to 7 plus 4, which was 11. So in this case, the letter J variable is equal to 11, and we double check just to be sure. Is 4 equal to 11 minus 7? And so if you count 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, yes. Oh, 10, I'm sorry. That I was subtracting 4. 11 minus 7 is in fact 4. So that's our check. And that is how we do this. So hopefully it really helps you out with doing, like I said, we're doing the one-step equations paper today, solving one-step equations, and this is the paper. So you can use, if you are at school and you've got the scale and the blocks and the pawns, you can use them. If you're at home, use the pictures. If you have questions, make sure you email Mrs. Richards or Mrs. Ramirez or Miss Potma, and we will help you. Have a wonderful day, everybody.